I'm about as real as they come.
All my beats tailored by Daryl. House Digital.
Maserati Rick in Detroit, convertible bird in Miami. Graduated summa cum laude, strip club made a tsunami. Carlton Hines with the ball game, Grateful Edmonds with the snowflakes, Craig Pettis in the M-Town, Sal Magluta with the boat game, Falcone with the cocaine, like Freeway Ricky with the plug game, like Monster Cody in South Central, Larry Davis from Close Range.
But I think that people will walk away having learned something. You don't walk away from this film just like, oh, okay, I love the gangster guy. No, you walk away feeling like, you know what, I wouldn't want to live that lifestyle because it looks rough and you can't get in too deep. So it's real.
You're going after God. Dwayne Gittins is his real name. We figure he's hooked into about 80% of the crime in the city. He's actually the antithesis of God. He's the opposite of what God represents to, most, that name represents the most human beings in the world. He's a murderer. He's a crime lord. He's a ruthless dictator. You could quite easily, transfer use this film as a metaphor for some big nation in the country in the past, or in the world in the past, that's what he was. He's a medieval king.
That third world country that LL was speaking of would be a housing project in Roxbury, Massachusetts. And in 1989, it would be ground zero for the crack trade in Boston. But just as we all learned too well, with the surge of money that the drugs would bring to the city, the ripple effect would produce violence.
Roxbury leaders met behind closed doors today to begin work on a plan to deal with the growing problem of gang violence that has gripped their community. Violence that has claimed 2 young lives in less than 2 weeks. On Friday night, August 19th, 11-year-old Darlene Tiffany Moore was gunned down in the crossfire between 2 warring drug gangs. This past weekend, witnesses say 14-year-old Richard Bailey was stabbed to death by a rival gang member because of a turf dispute. The stabbing happened Saturday night. A group of boys ran from over in this area. They chased the victim. He was one of several people who tried to get away. He just didn't get away fast enough. They slammed him against the car, witnesses say. They stabbed him, and he fell right here. In response to tips from people in the neighborhood fed up with the violence, police arrested 4 suspects in connection with the Bailey murder case. They were arraigned today in Roxbury District Court.
At the height of his reign over the city of Boston's drug trade, one of the city's most prolific dealers, often said to be responsible for bringing crack to the city, would make the same mistake that many make in this day and age of exposure. He would step out of the shadows. On April 27, 1990, a publication by the name of the Boston Phoenix would publish and run a story titled Gang Godfather or Mean Streets Robin Hood. The article would start off detailing a court battle that a 34-year-old man by the name of Daryl Whiting was having with the city of Dorchester and read, "Right now, Whiting is being hassled here in Dorchester District Court by a peddling charge leveled against him by the Boston Police Department for operating an entertainment spot without a license." Whiting stood contritely before Judge James Dolan, hands behind his back, and requested a jury trial. The judge charged him $25 for being tardy and another $100 for failing to seek a jury trial at least 7 days before his court appearance. Daryl Whiting calmly peeled off $125 from a wad he had been palming in his left hand and handed it over as if he was flicking a speck off his expensive suit. Although he was a busy man, Whiting would just have to make room in his appointment book for May 10, 1990, for a Boston Municipal Court trial date to answer the no license allegations about his club. The venue in question is the Crown Social and Recreation Hall at 48 Geneva Avenue, right off Blue Hill Avenue. Crown Hall would be the centerpiece of Whiting's expanding small business investments, an inventory that also included Crown Video, Crown Barbershop, Crown Sneaker, and Second Exodus Productions, while another venture, Crown Limo is warming up in the wings. In certain circles on the street, Whiting and his Crown Hall have garnered a big rep. With the police, for example, a number of law enforcement sources have told the Phoenix that they believe Crown Hall and the other firms are secondary to the most prominent and profitable sector of Daryl Whiting's burgeoning business empire: drugs. He's one of the biggest drug traffickers in this fucking city, said one Boston police source. And it was from his position as a top dog drug trafficker, police sources believe, that Daryl Whiting is now brilliantly angling to become the godfather of Boston's gangdom. His dream, these sources say, is to consolidate and control the city's lucrative gang drug market. Despite the official pronouncements to the contrary peddled by the Boston police, this crew's commerce appears to be rapidly expanding.
News media calls them a gang. We call it a posse. We just hang with our friends, chilling. They call it a gang. Violence happens, then it's gang war.
Our gangs have steadily increased when the coverage of these gangs has increased.
Those alternatives being offered to stop the situation in Boston from becoming like that in Los Angeles.
City officials in LA feel an entire generation is already lost. Miles O'Brien and Lester Strong report on efforts being taken here to get kids off the streets before it's too late.
Now, fearing the formation of structured gangs similar to what was unfolding in Los Angeles, the article would continue. Despite the deadly game of the now being played by the Boston police brass, both street and police sources say that Boston's power posses continue to move even closer to a ruthless, sophisticated, expansion-minded, LA-style setup. It would be 8 months after that article would go to press and be published that Daryl Whiting will become one of the first black men to be sentenced in the city of Boston under the kingpin law.
See, actually, I wasn't the first kingpin in Boston. I was the first kingpin that was given a life sentence for narcotics. Because there was one black dude that was from Boston, from around the Roxbury, Dorchester area, who had a 848 or CCE charge before I did. CCE stands for Continuing Criminal Enterprise. But he didn't get a life sentence. I was just the first one who got a life sentence for it.
In the late 1980s, Daryl Whiting allegedly took his operation to Boston's Orchard Park projects and forever changed the city's landscape. A former New York stick-up kid, Whiting arrived at the dawn of the crack epidemic and allegedly transformed the poverty-stricken neighborhood into a 24-hour drug supermarket, generating as much as $100,000 a day. His empire, supposedly fortified by a crew imported from his old neighborhood in Corona, Queens, would create a network that would rival any organized crime syndicate in the city. For years, he would operate from the shadows, using a combination of alleged terror and community outreach to solidify his control. But eventually, with the city turning more and more violent by the day, he would inevitably end up on law enforcement's radar. His story would become so infamous and captivating that in 1999, Miramax would cast Omar Epps and LL Cool J and turn it into a Hollywood thriller.
Nah, we were Cop J. What you think? I think you know the answer to that, Clam.
Use the apartments for free. I'm working hard. I feel good. I'm really concentrating on the craft. I take it very seriously. I work hard at it, and I'm thankful, very thankful. It was dark. It was spiritually different for me because it's not a place that I occupy a lot, just as a human being, but overall it was a challenge that I enjoyed, and I think I lived up to it. It's not gratuitous and it's not glorified. It's very ugly, it's very brutal, it's very real, But I think that people will walk away having learned something. You don't walk away from this film just like, oh, okay, I love the gangster guy. No, you walk away feeling like, you know what, I wouldn't want to live that lifestyle because it looks rough and you can't get in too deep. So it's real. It was titled well, and I feel good about it.
It is said that it's based on a true story.
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever get to meet the real person?
No, never got to meet the real cop. But
does he not want his name known?
Well, he's passed away.
All right.
Yeah, he's passed away in about '94. So
in the line of duty, or?
Well, he took his own life.
Oh, tragic.
So the effects of you know, what he went through, you know, horrific. You know? So you know, drove him to that place. You know.
Oh my.
Yeah.
Imagine a movie that takes inspiration from real life events or people, yet when you watch it, the details don't quite match up to what you know. That's where the term loosely based comes in. It's like the filmmaker takes the core of a true story, a person's life, a crime that shocked the city, a historical event that changed the course of time, and then let their imagination fill in the rest. They might keep some recognizable elements, but the characters are reshaped, settings are changed, and the timeline shifts. What you end up with is a story that may look and feel real, but it's enhanced with a layer of fiction. In the end, the essence of truth is still there, but the final product is a version meant to entertain rather than inform. Because when something is loosely based, it's important to remember it's not always the true story.
We was originally charged in the first indictment with conspiracy that involved like 9 or 10 people that wasn't part of the New York Boys, and people that we didn't even know, right? So from that day, right, we was going, our defense became multiple conspiracy defense. And what a multiple conspiracy defense is that if you find a defendant guilty of a conspiracy other than the conspiracy mentioned in the indictment, then you must find that defendant not guilty. That would have been the instructions for the multiple conspiracy, right? Okay, so it was like 50 was charged in the indictment, but of the 50, only like say 6 of them, 5 or 6 people had any involvement with the undercover agent. You know what I'm saying? But in return, right? Me and another one of my co-defendants, that they call my first lieutenant, we was charged with 24 counts of aid and abetting in the distribution of cocaine. Even though we wasn't present during the transactions, you know what I'm saying, we were still charged with aiding and abetting in the transaction because they were saying that if it wasn't for us, that the drugs wouldn't have been distributed. You know what I'm saying? Because they were my drugs. Right? So, getting out of our offense was multiple conspiracy. Everybody was going to take the weight for the drug that they had sold the agent, you know what I'm saying, to prove that there wasn't no overall one conspiracy. And this way, you know what I'm saying, we would all would have been charged, right? But then 2 of the dudes who actually had dealings with the agent, they became cooperating witnesses. 2 other people, they was on the run. Like later on, one of them turned himself in, and then he started cooperating, you know. But anyway, how I had got caught up in it is that my defense was also in an entrapment defense because the agent had came to me like 4 or 5 times trying to tell me something about my man had sold him some drugs and that he shorted him. And I'm telling him like, yo, I don't have anything to do with that. I don't know what you're talking about. Just then I don't want to get involved with that. You understand what I'm saying? So after about the 4th or 5th time, he came back to me and he told me that, yo, if you don't straighten this out, I'm gonna end up doing something to your man, right? Like, I was like, what? So now I'm heated because he was coming around to my business and my club, you know, coming to my office, you know, trying to see me, tell me this here. So then I said, yo, come on with me, man. And so then I took him down to the project and I told my man, like, yo, if you owe this dude anything, man, give him what you owe him and stop fucking with him. And that's how I got caught up in one of the transactions with my man. And then, you know what I'm saying, my man said, nah, you cool, I'm all right. So I told myself, yo, if you want to keep on fucking with him, that's on you, man. I would suggest that you leave him alone. You understand what I'm saying? And then another time, he gave me $5,000 to give my man, so I got caught up in that. And then one time I came up in the office when they was counting money, and I was caught on tape.
It was the Boston Phoenix article from 1990 that made Daryl Whiting a top priority for authorities. Up until then, Whiting had been operating relatively undisturbed, his empire growing day by day. But when the article came out, it put a spotlight on Whiting in a way he never expected. He sat down with the reporter, flaunting his business, boasting about his influence, and portraying himself as a legitimate community leader, while the streets of Boston allegedly crumbled under the weight of his drug operation. We threw down a gauntlet, say U.S. Attorney Wayne Budd, when he had the audacity to appear in that newspaper. For Budd, it was a declaration of power that couldn't be ignored. But by that time, Whiting was no longer just another dealer. He was a kingpin who had already won the bloody turf wars of 1989, solidifying his grip on Boston's crack trade. The New York boys, his crew of enforcers brought down from Queens, were said to be ruthless in their dominance of the Orchard Park projects, eliminating rival dealers and intimidating local gangs into submission. Whiting's strategy was brutal but effective. By 1989, he not only pushed out the competition, but he also established himself as the undisputed leader of Boston's most profitable crack operation. His crew operated with military-like precision, at the same time turning the Orchard Park neighborhood into a 24-hour cocaine supermarket. Wayne Budd, the active U.S. attorney at the time, didn't see just another drug dealer. He saw a crime boss who was daring the authorities to come after him. And after the article's publication, Budd knew that Whiting had to be stopped. The DEA put together a special task force led by an undercover officer by the name of Jeffrey Coy, a street-savvy African-American cop who, at that time, had years' experience of infiltrating dangerous drug organizations. Coy would take on the alias Jay Reed and manage to gain access into Whiting's inner circle. In the 6 months thereafter, he would live a double life, buying drugs, participating in shootouts, and narrowly avoiding detection. He became so entrenched in the New York boys' operation that he began to lose sight of who he really was. And by the end, Coy was suffering from severe PTSD and identity confusion. But his work was crucial in building the case against Daryl Whiting and the New York boys. It would be his undercover buys, surveillance, and insider information provided to federal agents that would be essential in bringing God down. The trial was a spectacle that drew widespread attention, and a shocking move, Daryl Whiting decided to testify in his own defense, portraying himself as a legitimate businessman and community leader. But his calm facade would allegedly crack as he would start pointing fingers at his co-defendants, seemingly trying to distance himself from the very people who helped him build his empire. But it would be a desperate move that would seal his fate. And in 1993, Daryl Whiting became the first person in Massachusetts history to receive a life sentence under the new federal guidelines enacted after the cocaine-related death of basketball star Len Bias. His conviction was set to mark a turning point on the war on drugs in the city of Boston. But God's incarceration didn't set an end to the chaos that was set in motion. The New York boys might have been dismantled, but the void that was left behind would spark even more violence. Local gangs like the Trailblazers would move in, and the city would be plagued by hundreds of unsolved murders, mostly tied to drug gang violence. But by that time, Daryl Whiting would be locked up in a federal penitentiary, still clinging to his innocence as well as his reputation. He even wrote a fictional memoir where he was said to allegedly fantasize about taking revenge on those who would testify against him, despite the devastation he would allegedly cause and the lives that were destroyed in the process. Whiting would refuse to see himself as anything other than a misunderstood businessman. But the story wouldn't end there. The undercover officer, portrayed by Omar Epps in the movie In Too Deep that would risk everything to bring God down, Jeffrey Coy would not be able to escape the psychological toll that the operation would bring on. And 3 years after Daryl Whiting was convicted, Coy would take his own life. The entire scenario is so epic that it would inspire the 1999 film In Too Deep. God's rise and fall might have ended, but his legacy will continue to live on every time the film is played. Now, the most intriguing thing to this story to me is I couldn't find another movie besides American Gangster tied to Frank Lucas and Hoodlum tied to Bumpy Johnson and Stephanie St. Clair done by a black gangster. But I still want to know what y'all think where In Too Deep ranks as far as movies that was based on the life of gangsters, like Blow with George Jung or Goodfellas with Henry Hill, and etc. And if I left out any movies that have to do with black gangsters, y'all definitely drop them down in the comment box. Y'all make sure y'all tap on that red bell and subscribe button right under this video so y'all know when this real trill spill shit is dropping. Y'all head downstairs to that comment box so y'all know exactly when this real trill spill shit is dropping. And until the next time, y'all know the play. Shades Popalot. Salute the almighty mob.